All right, everyone may be seated. We are ready to proceed, ladies and gentlemen. This witness has been previously sworn to testify truthfully. Ms. Dool, Mr. State.
Yes, Your Honor, thank you. Tim, would you introduce yourself to the jury and state where you're currently employed?
Yes, sir. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. My name is Timothy Fitzpatrick. I'm employed with the Texas Department of Criminal Justice.
And what is your position title at the Texas Department of Criminal Justice?
I am the Director of Classification.
And I'm going to get to your CV in a minute, but how many different jobs have you done in the TDCJ system?
I have done numerous jobs. I started off as a correctional officer when I was 18 years old. I have held every correctional security rank, so including sergeant, lieutenant, captain, major, assistant warden, and warden at numerous facilities before I was assigned as the Director of Classification.
And when you say Director of Classification, what are your duties as the Director of Classification?
Sure. So just at a high level, those duties include and begin with the admission of all convicted felons in the state of Texas. So we have 254 counties in Texas. When someone is convicted of a crime and sentenced to the Texas prison system to serve their sentence, I have a department that begins with receiving all of that documentation from the courts. We review and certify that documentation, and then we schedule them for admittance into our custody. We are then responsible for all the physical admissions. So when someone arrives at one of our intake facilities, we conduct intake processing, which is a 30-day comprehensive process that we put them through. We are responsible for all time calculations, so making sure that the intent of the court and what someone is sentenced to is calculated correctly based on all of the court documentation. We assign every inmate that is received to one of our 104 prisons in the state of Texas. So they are spread throughout the entire state, and we have to make decisions on where to best assign those individuals once they get to our custody. Once they're at the facility that they're assigned to, we make decisions on housing, job placement, and things of that nature. We also process all releases at the very end. So essentially the way I like to describe it is it's incarceration from A to Z. It starts at the very beginning before they even get to us while they're in the county, and it ends the day they go out the door. So we are involved from start to finish.
All right. And in this particular position, does that also include the Polinsky unit or death row in Livingston, Texas?
Yes, sir, it does.
All right. And how long have you been doing this particular Director of Classification job?
I've been the Director of Classification for about 4.5 years.
And in this particular capacity, how many people do you manage in this position?
My division particularly has a little over 2,000 employees for the state.
And when we talk about, I'm going to use the term staff, is staff, is that term defined, is that just prison guards in the TDCJ system, or who is that?
No, sir. We have a wide array of public servants who work within our prison system, so it's not just the correctional officers.
All right. So what other kinds of people would be considered as staff in the TDCJ system?
Sure. So we have staff that work, like I said earlier, in the classification and intake departments. Those folks do not wear uniforms like our correctional officers. We have maintenance personnel. We have employees that work in the commissaries. So there is folks, all kinds of support functions that have to operate at prison setting.
And in addition to those people that are employed by the TDCJ system, are there other people who work in the system but are not technically TDCJ employees? Yes.
Yeah, we have a large base of contract employees, so all of our medical care is conducted by contract personnel. We also have the Windham School District that comprise all of our educational services for the prison system as well. So there's a lot of different contract employees that work inside the fence.
And then what about volunteers? Do you have volunteers that participate in the TDCJ system?
Yes, sir. We have about 29,000 or more volunteers that are approved to come into our prisons around the state.
Okay. And as far as the things that they provide, is that things like clergy, teacher, things of that nature? Is that what they provide?
Sure. So a lot of that volunteer base is for religious purposes. So you have different, whether it's a church group or religious organizations that have volunteers that come in. But also you'll see a lot of things like Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, anger management courses, things on how to be a better parent, things of that nature. So there's a lot of different organizations that have volunteers that spend their time to come in and try their best to help on that rehabilitation of the population.
Now, what I'm going to do is talk to you a little bit about the classification of people that are in the prison system, as we talked about, and then the difference between people that are in the Polinsky unit, death row, okay? So let's start and focus on classification for people that are actually serving an actual sentence, okay? I'm familiar, there's a G scale that we classify those people on, correct?
Yes, sir.
And I'm just going to focus on two parts of that, just in the nature of brevity here. What's the difference between a G2 inmate and a G3 inmate?
Sure. So just for the jury's understanding, G just stands for general population. And we have a scale, like he mentioned, it goes from G1 to G5. G5 being the worst, G1 being the very best. The vast majority of individuals, when they're received within our custody, they start off as a G2 custody inmate. G2 just means that they're going to be serving less than 50 years in our custody. If they are going to be sentenced to more than 50 years, anything 50 or above, up to and including life without parole, they're going to start as a G3. So they're starting right there in the middle. And then anything above is going to be a behavioral issue, and I believe we get into that a little bit later, or I can cover that now. And then anything below that G1 is going to be reserved for a very select group of non-violent individuals that work outside the fence.
I want to talk about offenses and potentially some myths here. Is it true that if someone commits a sex crime, that they're segregated from the rest of the prison population? Is that true?
That is not true.
And with regard to an offense involving violent offenses like murder, aggravated assault, weapons offenses, are they similar? Are they housed separately?
They are not housed separately.
So let me give you an example. If an inmate is serving, let's say, a 40-year sentence for murder, and then someone serving a 60-year sentence for as a habitual drug offender, right? What classification would the 40-year sentence get based on the G scale?
That individual would be a G2 if they have a positive, no disciplinary history. They would be a G2.
All right, walking in the door.
Sure, walking in the door.
And then the person that's a 60-year sentence because they're a habitual drug offender, what are they classified as?
They'll be a G3 walking in the door.
And somebody there for serving life without parole for capital murder, they're going to be what?
They would be a G3.
Okay. The same as our habitual drug offender.
That's correct.
All right. Now, let's talk a little bit about the G4 and 5 quickly. G4 and 5, you said that had to do something with behavior. What do you mean by that?
Sure. So as I explained, the G2 and G3 is solely based on the sentence and the charge when they're received. G4 and G5 has nothing to do with their charge or their sentence. It has everything to do with their institutional adjustment. So how are they behaving once they're received into our custody? Are they complying with rules and regulations? Are they listening to the staff? Are they not getting into fights or altercations? All of those higher custodies, the G4 and G5, is based on the behavior of the individual once they're received.
All right. Let's talk about, just for information, let's talk about prison housing. In the TDCJ system, what are the two basic types of housing that inmates in the system, whether they're G2 or G3, that they have? What are the two basic types?
Sure. Two basic types is going to be a cell block environment, which is your typical cell that's going to have two individuals living in sort of a bunk bed environment on top of each other in a cell. The other environment is going to be a dormitory. So surely want to share this, that 51% of the beds in the Texas prison system are a dorm environment. 49% are cells. So those dorms can range anywhere from a small dorm, 8, 10-man dormitory, all the way up to about 150 men or women in one dormitory together, essentially in cubicles.
Okay. And so, and again, I'm going to stay focused on just our G2 and G3 inmates, just trying to be efficient here.
Sure.
With regard to G2, G3 inmates, do they have access to either housing arrangement?
Yes.
Okay. And then let's talk about movement around the prison. What I mean is when G2 and G3 inmates are moving about the prison, are they secured in any way, handcuffs, shackles, things of that nature?
No, sir. They walk to wherever they're going to be going.
Okay. Even if they're serving life for capital murder?
That's correct.
Is this the same when they go outside?
Yes, there are instances where we have job assignments where individuals could work outside of the fence under armed supervision, but they are not restrained with hand restraints or leg restraints.
Let me back up. When a G2 or G3 inmate that's not going outside the fence, I'm assuming they go outside at some point.
Recreation and things
Recreation.
that, sure, yes.
And during that time, is our G2, G3 inmates, are they chained or shackled or limited when they go outside?
No, sir.
Let's talk about meals. How does it work for those in either the dorm or the cell block environment? How does it work for them to go to meals?
When it's time for a meal, the living area where they are at are notified for the meal time. They then walk 25 at a time down to the dining hall. Some dining halls hold around 100 individuals. Some hold up to 400 individuals in one dining hall together. So they go in groups of 25, but then once they arrive at the dining hall, it could be a much larger group that's eating together.
And so this is the same whether you're serving 2 years for DWI or life without parole for a capital murder.
That's correct. They would be in there together.
Is that the same for church and medical? Does that work the same for both religious services and medical?
Yes, it does. Same way.
All right. You said something about jobs. Let me ask you, are there inside the fence jobs available for inmates?
Yes, the best way I like to describe this is think of prison like a small city. And so inside of a city, you need every type of job, right? Folks that are going to be preparing and serving food, folks that are going to be fixing, doing plumbing work or other maintenance type jobs. So there is a vast array of jobs for the prison, for every single prison. And it is our goal to ensure that everyone is being as productive as possible while they're incarcerated. And so we do assign jobs to the fullest extent based on their medical considerations.
Yeah. And so is that, whether or not they have a job or not, is that limited by the type of offense they committed if they're a G2 or G3 inmate?
There is very minimal limitations.
Is it limited by the type of offense as far as violent or nonviolent?
No, it's not.
Is it limited by the type of offense, whether it's drugs or theft?
It is not limited based on that.
I'm going to talk a little bit about transport. Inmates that are serving time, including our capital murder inmates that are serving life without parole, are they sometimes transferred between locations?
Yes, we as TDCJ has to make decisions on those placements around those 104 prisons, as I mentioned earlier. We move anywhere from 1,500 to 2,000 inmates a day on buses or vans all around the state of Texas, so they are moved frequently.
And again, kind of the same similar question with regard to jobs. Is that movement, who you're moved with, limited by virtue of your offense?
No, sir. It's only based on the custody. So when an individual, any individual G2 or G3 custody could be on a bus, and that's with up to 40 other inmates traveling together on the road.
We talked a little bit about medical treatment. Who provides all the medical care for the Texas inmates?
So we have two university partners. So the University of Texas Medical Branch provides the vast amount of medical services and mental health services for the entire eastern and southern part of the state of Texas. and then the northwestern part is provided by Texas Tech University.
Talk about housing, jobs. Let's talk a little bit about commonly, how does visitation work with people serving a sentence in the Texas prison system?
So we have two different main forms of visitation. We call them contact visitation and non-contact visitation.
And somebody serving in a G2 or G3 status, like we would talk about, are they available to have contact visitation?
Yes, they are.
And what does that look like for those of us who are fortunately not presently in the prison system?
Sure. So many of them are around a room this size. And within the room you would have multiple small tables, it could be round or square tables, and the family members, whoever that might be that's coming to visit, including children, would come in and sit at those tables around the whole room. And then the inmate would come into the room and they would sit. I mean, it's contact, so they're allowed to hug, they're allowed to hold hands, they're at the table with the person that's coming to visit them in the room with the other visits that are happening simultaneously.
Okay. And any limits on which G2 or G3 inmates are allowed to have this type of contact visitation in these rooms that you're describing?
There are no limits as long as the visitors are on their visitation list and meet the policy.
Now, what process is in place to kind of warn these civilians that are coming in there as to who's sitting at the table next to them? What process in place to let them know who's sitting around them?
There is no process for that.
So the children and other people in the room, they're not made aware of who else is visiting them and what they did?
That is going to be protected information, essentially, so security type information, so we would not be able to tell other families the charge or the sentence of the individual sitting potentially right next to them at the other table.
And typically, how many guards are there in the room?
1 to 2 correctional officers in the room.
Let's talk about other services available to people in G2, G3 status. What type of things, for example, like entertainment, TV, internet, what types of things are available to those G2, G3 inmates in the prison system?
Sure. So almost every living area has what we call a day room area. It's just a common area where there's televisions. They can watch television throughout the majority of the day. They do have access to computers through different educational programs and college courses. The internet access is going to be very, very restricted based on the type of program or course that they're going through, so there is not just internet access for the population. And then they also are provided tablets, so they get a tablet that they are able to get their mail on digitally. They are able to read books on those tablets, send messages back and forth to folks that are outside of prison. They have games, music, books, everything else on those tablets as well.
And that's for all G2, G3 inmates, including people serving life without parole?
That's correct.
Now, we talked a little bit about volunteers that are in the prison system. With regard to these volunteers, kind of a similar question to visitation. Is there any type of divider between these volunteers and the inmates?
There is no divider.
And so, for example, if we're having a religious service, is there any process to make the volunteers aware of the people that are in the same room with them?
No, sir. Those volunteers come in and let's say they are going to do a church service on Sunday morning. We do what's called an all call, so we go to each living area and say, anyone that wants to come to this church service at 9 a.m., come on out and go down to whether it's a chapel or a gym area. It's just a little different based on the infrastructure of every facility, but once everyone gets down there, there could be hundreds of individuals in that room at one time. For that service, the volunteers are not made aware of every single convicted felon in that room and what their charges are, and they interact and mingle amongst the population.
Let's talk about commissary. A lot of people may not know what that means, but give us just kind of a general description of what is commissary.
Sure. So, way to think about commissary is just a store within the prison. They have spend limits based on their custody. So, G2 and G3 inmates can spend $105 every 2 weeks within the commissary. They can buy all different kinds of food, drink items, shoes, different small appliances. We sell alarm clocks, fans, things of that nature. So there's a lot of different items, hygiene products and things like that that are for sale.
And is that limited between G2, G3 inmates?
It is not limited, no.
Including someone who may be serving life without parole for capital murder?
They would have access to all those items.
So, just to be completely clear here, is there any, other than the term of sentence, is there any meaningful difference between somebody classified as G2 or G3 other than just their time of sentence?
The only real difference is when you look at basic prison life is going to be a slight difference in the job that they can be assigned to. So a G2 can have essentially any job within the prison setting. A G3 can have any job unless it has access to multiple areas of the prison. So a quick example is a G3 inmate could not work in maintenance because they might have to go and fix a shower on one side of the prison and then fix a toilet on the other side of the prison. So that's multiple areas. But that G3 could work in the kitchen because that's one area, or the industry building. So they surely still have jobs. It's just a small variance on the type of job that they can be assigned.
You talked about G4 and G5 inmates, and that is changes due to behavior.
That is correct.
And when somebody has that type of disciplinary issue, would that cause potentially their classification to change?
Yes, that is possible.
Okay. And for example, let me just give you an example. If a G3 inmate, let's say, commits a minor assault, one that doesn't require extensive medical care, is that something that they would have potentially a classification change?
Sure. So if someone commits an assault of that nature, a disciplinary infraction would be written. They would go before a disciplinary hearing officer, and if they were found guilty, they would then come before the unit classification committee. So it's a 3-panel committee who would make a decision on whether or not their custody needed to be downgraded. So they could be downgraded to G4 or G5 if it was more egregious, or remain at their current custody if the panel thought that it was not a significant concern.
So there's a possibility that one could assault a guard or inmate or staff, but not even lose their classification.
That is possible if it was not serious in nature.
Let's say they do lose their classification. What's the process for that to be reviewed and change at a later date?
Sure. So if today somebody is downgraded to a higher custody, they have an automatic review date at the 6-month date of their downgrade. So 6 months later, they would come back before that committee again. We would reevaluate how they've behaved through those 6 months and then make a new determination on if they're going to be promoted or remain where they're at.
And so once that's complete and they get their review, is the inmate then allowed back to the same access they had before?
Yes, if they are promoted, they go back to that same access that they had prior to the disciplinary.
And is it possible that somebody could commit multiple disciplinary infractions, including assault, over a long period of time and simply just move back and forth every 6 months between their classifications?
Yes, sir. It happens often. It's very fluid. So a classification is a very fluid process, and we do see that often where individuals violate rules and regulations, get downgraded, get promoted again, get given another chance, and then continue down that path of negative institutional adjustment. So we do see that often.
I'm going to talk to you just briefly about, I think it's called restrictive housing.
Sure.
These would be people that are, I would assume, are G5 inmates, is that right?
No, sir. Restrictive housing is actually above G5, so it's a more secure housing environment that is above the general population.
And is that based upon the offense you commit when you come into prison, or something you do while you're in prison?
It could be a culmination of both. So there's only 3 reasons why we place individuals into restrictive housing. This makes up a very small portion of the Texas prison population, about 1.8%. They have to be a confirmed member of one of our security threat groups or gangs. These are one of our this is not a street gang. These are organized prison gangs. They have to be a member of one of those 5 gangs. Number 2 is they have to be a current escape risk, or they have to be a current significant threat to prison operations. So this is someone who has consistently displayed aggressive behavior towards staff or other inmates. So they have to fall into one of those 3 categories.
So it doesn't necessarily have anything to do with what offense they committed on the outside?
Not necessarily, unless, for instance, they escaped from a county jail, per se. So that could be a situation where it was prior to incarceration, but the majority of these are situations that have happened during our custody.
While serving time, how does someone tell the difference between a G2 inmate and a G3 inmate?
Well, our line staff will not know that per se. They don't wear a different color uniform. They don't have any other identifiers other than for one of our correctional staff members working on the floor to understand or know that right away. There are, of course, reports and things that the classification and administrative staff can see to know who is doing what sentence.
I guess I'm trying to figure out, how does someone in the prison system, whether it's a prison security official, medical staff, or a volunteer, how do they tell if the person they're interacting with has committed a violent murder or they're serving 2 years for DWI?
They would not know that unless they looked him up on the computer.
Let's talk a little bit about behavior management. You talked about how people have reviews in a committee and things. What in your experience, what's the best motivator for people to act right in prison?
In my experience, the very best motivator is going to be the possibility of parole.
All right. So the hope of getting out.
That's right. Hope is a critical piece that we try to tap into through management and rehabilitation. But yes, someone's ability, knowing that they have a parole review coming up sometime in the future, is a keen driving factor behind positive behavior.
Just in general, is prison a stressful environment?
I think that could be a very good way to put it. It is inherently negative, right? You have an environment where you have thousands of people who don't want to be there. And so, yes, it can be stressful. It can be a negative environment, and that's something that we have to manage daily.
Now, I'm just going to talk about a little bit how the prison system interacts with the inmates. Do inmates have any direct control over where they live and who they live with?
No, they do not.
Do they have control over the type of housing that they may have? You said it was dorm or cell block. Do they have any control over that?
They do not.
And then with regard to inmates serving a sentence, what is the possibility that their living arrangements may change?
It's very possible. Earlier I spoke about the fluidity of classification, but it goes deeper than that. So each of our prisons have different missions, right? Whether it's a security reason, a medical reason, a treatment reason, there are a large amount of reasons why someone could be moved internally within a prison or to another prison altogether. So that is something at the state classification level that we monitor on a daily basis and then make those decisions on those 1,500 plus moves a day around the state.
So with regard to prison life, is it possible that an inmate's location within the actual unit they're in, is it possible that that may change?
Yes, sir.
Is it possible that who they are housed with in a dorm, is it possible that that changes?
Yes, sir.
I think I already asked you this, but I want to make sure. Is it possible that they may be in Beaumont one day and in Wichita Falls the next?
Yes, sir, that is possible.
And that's just based upon what the prison system decides is in the best interest of population and efficiency.
That's correct. Yeah.
And given that propensity for change, given that propensity for stress, if any particular inmate who is triggered by that stress and tends to react with violence, does that cause any potential problems while in prison?
Yes, any behavior where the result of their actions is violence, that's going to be a significant concern. It's a concern for my staff. It's a concern for the other prisoners that are incarcerated around that individual. So, yes, the manner in which somebody reacts to their environment, especially if that reaction is violent in nature, that is going to be a concern.
And then secondarily, in the prison system, you said there's, I think you used the term infraction, is that right?
Yes, sir.
And can you just give us the 10-cent version of the types of things that may be infractions?
Sure. So you have on the low end things like they're not in the right area, right, or they're not listening to an order that's given to them from a correctional officer, or they're being disrespectful towards staff, things of that nature. All the way up to significant contraband possession, cell phones, drugs, weapons, escape attempts, serious assaults, homicides. It is the full array, again, kind of going back to just the way it is here in society. All those infractions that I listed, it's the same thing within prison, with, of course, more structure and expectations on the way they behave and manage their behavior within prison.
And if you said talk about drugs, not to speak ill of the prison system, but there's still drugs in our Texas prison system, correct?
That is a fact of life, yes, sir.
And, for example, I asked you before, if an inmate is caught committing one of those infractions by a guard, and their default, because of whoever they are, is to resort to violence, does that cause any problems?
Yes, it does. And to your question, go ahead.
Is that the same thing you described for somebody who reacts to stress and change? Is that the same type of problem?
Yes. Yes.
Now, kind of dispelled a couple of myths here. Is it true that there is a typical predator versus prey person or inmate in the prison system? Is that true?
There is no mold for me or anyone in the correctional setting to say this person will or will not be a predator or prey. No.
You just can't tell.
It is case by case. Yes, sir.
Now let's talk a little bit about, I talked about the Polinsky unit.
Sure.
And where is it located?
I was a captain over death row at that facility. It is in Livingston, Texas.
And so let's talk about a little bit of differences here. With regard to housing at the Polinsky unit in Livingston, is it the two different types of housing that we have in the normal prison system, or is it one type of housing?
It is different and is one type.
Okay. And then with regard, I'm going to ask you some of the similar questions here.
Sure.
With regard to the movement of inmates within that unit, how does that differ from the regular, say you're a G2 or G3 inmate at serving time?
So, like I explained earlier, for that movement going to and from the dining hall and things of that nature, there is nothing like that within the death row environment. So, any time before someone is going to be taken out of their cell within death row, they are completely searched, strip searched. They are then they redress, restraints are applied, the door is open, and they're escorted out of their cell with two correctional officers at all time, taking them where they need to go, and they remain restrained the entire escort.
And I'm going to kind of go through this quickly here. Is that the same for transport, medical, things of that nature? Does that remain the same for that?
Yes, transport's completely different. They will never be on a bus. Anyone assigned to death row is going to be in a van, a secure van by themselves with vehicles in front of and possibly behind, following and chasing that vehicle. Much higher level of security oversight for types of transports. For your question about medical, someone in G2 and G3, they get essentially what you and I would know as in a doctor's appointment, right? They get a little slip with their time. They show that slip to the correctional staff and they walk down to the unit medical department. You contrast that with death row. Those individuals, again, are restrained and escorted to that medical appointment. There's no one else around. The hallways are cleared. And that staff remains with that individual the entirety of the medical or mental health appointment. So they are not going down there alone.
We talked about structure, routine, and change. Talk to us about the difference between structure, routine, and change between normal prison unit and the Polinsky unit in Livingston.
Sure. So death row, by nature, is far more structured. It is they remain at that facility for the entirety of their incarceration up until that sentence is carried out. The structure of their movement is much different, as I just explained. So it is very different compared to the general population movement. The living area, they are in the cell by themselves. There's not a cellmate that's assigned to their cell. So everything about it is far more structured and a lot higher level of management and oversight.
Pass the witness, Sean.
Let's break for lunch, okay, and we'll start up at
Everyone move to seat. Good afternoon. Mr. State, you wish to reopen the briefly?
Would just briefly, Your Honor, may I approach?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Fitzpatrick has shown you this remarks, Exhibit 6, Exhibit 310. Can you tell us what that is?
This is my CV, sir.
Is that a true and correct copy of your CV?
Yes, it is.
Okay, and does that reflect the things you talked about earlier with regard to your work in the prison system?
Yes, sir, it does.
So at this time, we'd offer State 310.
Takes 310 is admitted.
Now,
All right, cross-examination.
Yes, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Mr. Fitzpatrick.
Good afternoon.
Good to see you again. Now, Mr. Stanton asked you some questions that made it sound like you're just terrible at your job. The prisoners are running amok. You have no way to know who's violent. And God forbid you transport them in a bus or they're just free and roaming. That's not accurate, is it?
No, sir, that's not accurate.
Now, what's your top priority for your division?
Our top priority as an agency is public safety. That is our number one core function, is providing the safe incarceration of individuals in Texas and protecting our citizens.
And that also includes the safety of the staff, the visitors, and the inmates. Correct?
That is correct.
Now, let me clear up a couple of things. You went through it pretty quickly on the Wyndham School District contracts for educational. Nobody's going to a school, right? That's them educating the prisoners, the inmates.
That is correct. They come into our facilities,
Yes.
and they have a campus essentially inside of the prison walls, and that's where they conduct their educational services. They also do vocational services, so they might be able to learn how to be a diesel mechanic or things of that nature.
Sure. And talking about inside the prison walls, a G3, which is anyone with over 50 years, would include someone with life without parole. That means they're restricted to living within 4 concrete walls, right?
They are within the walls, yeah. It could be concrete, it could be fencing, but yes.
And they're not allowed to live out at a work camp or anything like that.
That is correct.
And when you talked about working outside, you meant outside the building, not outside a prison facility.
They could do both.
A G3 could?
Yes, they could work outside the secure perimeter in what we call a field squad.
Sure.
They would be under direct armed supervision.
Now, you talked about there being 104 prisons. How many can house a G3?
34 of those prisons within the state they're designated to house G3 custody.
And you talked about your division is in charge of transport too.
That's correct.
And you do safely transport prisoners all the time, intake to different facilities, that sort of thing.
Yes, sir. That's one of our missions. Yes.
Now, let's back up and talk a little bit about some of the things we've talked about before. How many employees does TCDJ have?
We have around 34,000 employees throughout the state.
And how many inmates do we have approximately right now?
This morning, the count was 142,464 incarcerated.
And it's your job to determine, your division, I guess, not you personally, but your whole division's job to determine which facility best suits the needs of an inmate.
That's correct. That is one of our goals.
And that's an ongoing process throughout their incarceration.
That's correct.
So when we're talking about reviews every 6 months, that's not because you're looking to be easy on people or turn them loose. That's because you're wanting to be current.
That's correct. That 6-month time frame was more specifically geared towards when someone gets a disciplinary infraction.
Sure.
But there are many reasons why someone could receive a classification review. It could just be because they've been accepted into a new program or things of that nature. So it is very fluid, and it does change often.
Now, let's talk a little bit about that. Your that determination involves more than just security, right?
Correct.
And what are some of the other things you're looking at?
Some of the biggest driving factors behind classification and placement is going to be their medical needs. So, for instance, if someone needs dialysis, well, that 104 prisons becomes much smaller on the options that I have on where to send and place somebody. Their mental health needs, their treatment needs, programming needs. So classification is surely a dynamic process of systems that encompasses a lot of different correctional professionals, medical professionals, all giving input and using tools to best assign someone where they fit.
Now, I think when we talked before, you said for the individual inmate classification, you're using a holistic approach.
That's correct.
And what does that mean to you?
So holistic, that's going to mean it's not just based on their sentence. It is not just based on their charge or their crime. We have to look at many factors. Some of them I just mentioned, right? Their medical needs, treatment needs, their criminogenic history, their demographics, their age. We look at all of those different factors and find the best placements for them around the state.
And for example, you mentioned before about how they've behaved in other facilities. An example of Tanner Horner, he's been in 2 different jails. That's something you would want to know and what happened there, right?
Sure. At the beginning, I talked about the intake process.
Yes.
And so when a county sentences someone or a court sentences someone to prison, the county has to provide what's called a penitentiary packet, or PEN packet for short. One of the documents that has to be included in that packet when it comes to the TDCJ is a jail conduct history. So, yes, I surely need to know what that conduct was like in the jail leading up to their transfer of custody to the TDCJ.
And we mentioned before, now, are all of your staff non-uniformed in your division?
No, sir, because I also oversee inmate transportation, so we do have a large portion that are non-uniformed. We have a couple of hundred that are uniformed.
And it's a couple hundred out of, you said roughly 2,000 in your division?
Correct, yes, sir.
Now, when someone is convicted of capital murder and sentenced to life without parole, where would they go for their intake?
Say that again, where would they go?
Where would someone who's convicted of capital murder, given life without parole, where would they go for their intake?
We have 5 main intake sites around the state, geographically located based on the county. So we have a facility in West Texas called the Middleton Unit. It's in Abilene. We have a facility up near Palestine, Tennessee Colony area, the Gurney Unit, the Holiday Unit in Huntsville, the Byrd Unit in Huntsville, and then for South Texas, we have the Garza West facility that's in Beeville. So an individual sentenced to life without parole, depending on the county of their sentencing, we would schedule them to the closest facility for intake.
And that's not all of the facilities you have for doing intake, correct?
No, we have other facilities that do state jail and probationary type intakes, but those are the main institutional division intake sites.
And so those 5 will have the training necessary and expertise necessary to do that classification on someone who's convicted of capital murder and sentenced to life without parole.
That's correct.
We talked a lot before about the 2 different ways that they could reside, either with a cellmate or in a dorm. And some of those dorms are pretty large, right?
Yes, sir.
And that persons who are G3 would have access, there may be volunteers, there may be staff members, things like that, that they could have contact with, correct?
Yes, sir.
And obviously it's your belief that they can have that contact and you can still maintain safety for the public, for the staff, for those visitors, for the other inmates.
That is correct. That is the goal of the correctional staff on those facilities, is to provide those opportunities for folks that are trying to better themselves and trying to have a positive adjustment while in prison. One of our foundational missions outside of public safety is rehabilitation, because that directly impacts public safety. The vast amount of our inmates are getting out at one point. Last year we received 56,000 new inmates. We released 50,000. So those people are going to go out and live next to you and I, again, based on their sentence. So our goal is going to be rehabilitation, right there beside public safety. And so, yes, we want to do all we can to get them to those programs and make sure that those go as smoothly as possible.
Let's revisit a second. I know you talked about movement around the facility, and it sounded a little willy-nilly. That's not what authorized movement means, is it? What does authorized movement look like for an inmate, say a G3?
Sure. So there's different reasons why they can move. So they could be coming out with a group of individuals going to a work assignment. They could be coming out and going to a program or to a meal. So there's different reasons why they can move in groups. There's also many reasons why they can move individually. So that example I gave earlier about the medical appointment, they wouldn't necessarily be going in a group. If just that one individual had an appointment, they would show their slip, essentially, and the officers would let them out, and they would walk through the hallways to go down to where their appointment was.
Is that what we mean when we say there's either a mass movement or they could have a pass to go somewhere?
Sure, yes.
Now, as part of that classification process, do the inmates receive a complete medical workup?
Yes, that's happening in tandem with the classification process. So during intake and then afterwards as well, they see nursing staff, they see medical providers, and then their electronic medical record is updated by the university partners, the medical partners. And when the EMR, the medical record is updated, that feeds into our inmate management system, and so we can see the vital data that we need. We're not going to see, for instance, someone's diagnosis, but we would see if someone, say they need a bottom bunk because they can't climb into the top bunk. So we would see different living and work restrictions that would impact how we assign people.
Okay. And in those 34 facilities, you're able to make those accommodations?
Yes.
Now, did they also receive a mental health workup as part of the classification process?
Yes, sir. Again, not as part of the classification process, but it's happening simultaneously.
Okay. So that happens, and that gives you data to rely on in doing the classification?
Correct.
Okay. So let's describe that quickly. You described the medical, uploading their information, and there was a medical exam as well?
Yeah, so there's different medical evaluations, and they put that information into the electronic medical record, and then out of that, our system pulls vital pieces of information that could impact their housing or job assignments. Same thing with mental health. So for instance, if someone is in a crisis event or has some kind of critical mental health need, the mental health providers might tell us, well, that person needs to be assigned to a specific inpatient program. Which would give them a certain psychiatric score, is what we call it. That would then tell us that individual can't live on certain units, they can only live at inpatient mental health units, as an example. There's other things far down that spectrum where it might just say, well, he or she is taking medication. Well, that medication is not going to dictate where they live.
Okay. So that's both an exam and I assume they're looking at mental health records.
But yes, yes.
Now, is G3 the minimum classification for someone who's convicted of capital murder and serving life without parole?
Yes, that is the minimum.
So they would never be a G2.
That is correct.
What is institutional adjustment?
The way I like to best describe that is when they arrive to the institution, how well do they manage that change? How well are they interacting with other inmates, with the staff, with volunteers, anyone else around them? Are they complying with rules and regulations? And ultimately, are they making the most of their time, or are they going down more of a negative path and violating rules and regulations and getting themselves into trouble? So it's how they are adjusting to prison life.
But once again, are you looking at how the institutional adjustment on the county level too? Is that something you take into consideration?
We do evaluate that during intake, yes.
And we talked about when someone gets downgraded to a G4 or a G5. Those inmates would receive additional restrictions, I assume?
Yes, sir.
And you talked about you have different restrictive housing available. Do you also have safekeeping housing available?
We do have safekeeping, yes.
How is that used?
So we have a small portion of our population that's in safekeeping. They still are in a cell block environment with cellmates. But we have a very robust Safe Prisons program and a PREA program, which is the Prison Rape Elimination Act. So you have a lot of different factors that go into evaluating someone's potential likelihood of being a victim within prison, or the fact that they have been victimized. We evaluate all of that, weigh it out, and then if the committee, again the UCC committee, that 3-person panel, decides that someone is in need of a higher level of safety or safe living, they could be placed into safekeeping status. They're still in general population buildings. They are just not in a general population living area. They're separated. They can still have jobs and go to the dining hall with other inmates and all those other examples. They just live separately.
Okay. So that could be within those 34 facilities we're talking about?
That's correct.
Okay. Let's go a little bit bigger picture. Now, is there guidance available for how to manage and maintain a prison classification system?
Yes, it is. There is many different guiding policies and evidence-based practices that guide classification.
Now, I believe we talked before about the National Institute of Corrections had some guidance from the federal level.
Yes, the National Institute of Corrections puts out federal level recommendations and things of that nature that, depending on what that guidance is, could or could not influence the state of Texas policy that drives classification.
Now, obviously, Texas may have some of their own guidance from the legislature, that sort of thing, correct?
Correct.
Now, are you able, in your role, in your division, to take that kind of guidance and then build on it to improve the system?
Yes.
And how often are you updating policies, procedures to try to make this a better system of classification?
It's frequent. There's many different standard operating procedures, policies, and plans. It's kind of 3 different buckets of information that are reviewed frequently. They could be updated because of new technology. They could be updated because of new, again, evidence-based data that shows us we might need to move in one direction or another. We look at different genders and how we're classifying females versus males. So there's a broad spectrum of changes that can and do happen throughout the years to make sure that we are providing for the mission of our agency, and that's protecting the public. And so we do not want to stay stagnant. We always want the most informed decisions guiding how we play out our mission in the state.
That was going to be my next question. And I assume when you talk about a prison being kind of a city, a secure city, you're also looking out for everyone within that city.
That's correct.
Now, I guess this is kind of obvious at this point, but you talked about someone on death row is obviously going to have less contact with everyone in that city than the other inmates, right?
That's correct.
But your division's job, that's part of what you're doing, is trying to make it as safe as possible for those people who aren't on death row.
Yes, to the
You
extent.
have that additional freedom.
Sure, to the fullest extent possible, yes.
What's a classification profile?
So the way that I like to describe that is this happens during the intake process, and then it never stops. So when someone comes into our custody, whether they're a first-time offender or if they've been with us multiple times, we are going to build a profile that works to encompass everything that we can about that individual. The idea is that down the road, the operators in the field have a good sense of everything about this person's history. So we go through family background, jobs, whether or not, any kind of gang affiliation, any prior arrests, whether they did or did not lead to incarceration. So we try to gather as much as we can. There's a bunch of different assessments that happen that guide treatment. So, IQ tests. We do an adverse childhood impact evaluation. We do the Texas Christian University drug screenings. So there's a bunch of different tools that are used during intake to build this foundational profile about every person that comes in our door. And then throughout their incarceration, that profile is constantly updated, again, based on that institutional adjustment. So how they're behaving, things could change from day to day, and that needs to stay current.
And is that information useful in fulfilling your primary goal?
Yes, it is useful.
Now, we talked about, I mentioned a second ago that the prison is kind of a city behind the walls, but this is a city that has 24/7 security, right?
Yes.
And the inmate movement is restricted,
Yes.
and the staff members are properly trained,
Yes.
and the civilians who enter are appropriately screened.
They are screened, yes.
So, in your expert opinion, is the process that you're using a reasonable and effective way to house someone who's been sentenced to life without parole while ensuring the safety of the public, your staff, the visitors, and the other inmates?
We do all we can to provide for the safety of the staff and for the public, so yes.
Council Witness Young.
Redirect.
All the same exam processes that you went through and talked about with regard to someone serving life without parole in the prison system, did those exist in the Polinsky unit on death row?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you talked a little bit about your goals and what do you use to be effective and provide a safe and effective place. But regardless of your goals, does violent conduct against staff still occur?
Again, just like the society analogy, we have laws to prevent violence against citizens. When you are dealing with a prison environment and in a society that's built up of, or made up of hundreds, if not thousands, of convicted felons, no matter how hard we try as an agency, we still have violence and concerns within prisons.
Is that your same answer when it comes to potential violence against volunteers that have been screened and in your prison system?
Yes.
That's what it is.
Mr. Goble.
A couple quick questions. For the G3s, are there any incentives for housing, things like that, that are available to them?
There are some incentives. So again, this goes back to the conversation of parole eligibility and hope. And so when I talk about hope within a prison, hope is a very intrinsic thing a lot of times. It's hard to tell who is going to act out because they do not have any hope. So we have, as an agency, an obligation to try to incentivize someone who may not, in other words, have any incentive because they might not be have a parole eligibility. So we do have some certain living environments within some of those prisons where if someone does not get a disciplinary case for X amount of years and they show good behavior and they're working hard at their job assignment, they might be able to live in an incentivized dormitory. But they're still within those 34 maximum security prisons. It's just certain dormitories within those prisons.
Okay. So there is positive reinforcement for even someone who's sentenced to life without parole.
Yes, that's correct.
And I guess specifically it's already been testified to that Mr. Horner had no disciplinaries at the Wise County Jail or at the Tarrant County Jail. That's something your division would take into consideration in building his profile.
Correct, up until the last day of his incarceration in the jail, and then leading up to the transfer to our custody, we would get that up until that very last day, and the county would let us know his behavior.
Pass witness, Your Honor.
Mr. Staten,
Nothing further on.
may this witness be excused?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
You ready for your next witness?
Yes, Judge.
Okay.